So when did you get into organized running?
Organized running, do you count P class?
Yeah, absolutely.
In
Because your
seventh
PE
grade,
guy probably saw that you had some talent.
seventh grade, every Friday at Roosevelt Junior High there was a mile run
Yeah.
or 7-minute run
Uh-huh.
or 600-meter run. So the one most memorable for me is the mile run.
Right.
And Coach Dick Lord, who was there at the Hall of
Yes,
Champions,
yeah.
this on Friday, he said, "You run hard, you're gonna get good grade, and A or B. If you mess around and goof around, you're gonna get D or F." And our parents always encourage us to do well in school and get the best out of ourselves.
Sure.
So I just ran really hard, and the result was 5:20.
Your first mile was a
First
5:20.
mile, 5:20.
So he's like, whoa.
Yeah, he called a high school coach who was at the time and still is Ed Ramos, and he said, "Hey, we got an Olympian here." So
He
right,
said that.
he
We
did
got an
say
Olympian
that.
here.
Yeah, yeah, because Mark Davis went to San Diego High,
Right.
and you know when I ran that 5:20, he goes, "We got another Olympian here."
That is so cool. I mean, did you, at that point, you weren't equating running, Olympics, any of that type of stuff?
I didn't speak much English, so I didn't even know what the Olympics were. So
That's
you know,
funny.
it's I just I was working very hard, and that kind of got me attention around the school because
Yeah.
I'm learning English, and kids say I was known as the fastest kid around. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the way there was icebreaker in a way for me, or get the self-esteem where I got from, and
So you're getting that self-esteem right away. You're thinking, oh, this sport's not that bad.
yeah, and then I went to Memorial Junior High in 8th grade,
Uh-huh.
and I ran there the little race, but I ran probably like 5:30 or 5:38, and then 9th grade is when I started competing as with practice, and
Right.
I went San Diego High. Well, even though I attended Memorial Junior High, I competed
Uh-huh.
for San Diego High.
Okay. And your first success at San Diego High?
Yeah, probably ran the mile in 4:30 or 4:32, and then by the end of the year, I remember running 4:22.
Wow.
As a freshman.
As a freshman.
Yeah, and then I think probably around 9:22 or for the 2 mile, and I thought I was gonna make the state meet in the 32 or 2 mile, and I finished 5th or so.
Right.
But you learn as
Sure.
you grow, and probably after the league championship or so, I went to the track and it did just a bunch of maybe for an hour run or something, and just one direction, and my hip was out of alignment by then.
Because you're just working too hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So-
Nice. So as you're going along in high school, at that point, I'm sure you're starting to get some calls from some of the colleges going, you know what, have you thought about where you want to go? Were you recruited pretty heavily?
Yes, I did, but let me tell you how the progress was.
Yeah.
As a sophomore, I ended up running 4:18 and 9:18 for the 2 mile,
Whew.
and then in my junior year, I ran 4:11 and 9:11 for 3,200 meter, and then by my senior year, I ran a 4:05 and 8:52 for the 3,200. So there was big
Every year,
progress
every year.
been an improvement, but it's there was a guy that also assisted me besides Coach Ramos was Ron Tabb, who
Yeah,
saw me
right.
in one of the practices after my sophomore year of high
You
school.
were
He just
209
says,
marathoner.
yeah, 209, 1983, I believe.
yeah.
He said, "You're gonna be a great marathoner one day." I'm
Did
like,
he really?
"Yeah," and I'm like, "I'm a miler. What are you crazy?" Now we're looking back now that
It's funny how people see things in you or in any of us before we do. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, I was one another person who was my teammate's parent
Mhm.
at the time. At that time, and he says, "You're gonna be a beautiful runner,
Yeah.
long distance, beautiful marathon runner." I'm like, "I'm a miler."
I want to be done in 4 minutes. I don't really want to be out
Yeah,
there for
and
2 hours.
you didn't know the distance. You're just doing 5K or
Right.
so cross country and things
Yeah.
like that. Versus now you're talking about marathon. I'm like, well, I want to enjoy this, or you don't know what it's gonna take to that level. You're just kind of going all out, trying to break 4 minute in high school. But I ran 4:05 3 times.
Yeah.
So I know the talent was there, but then I was getting recruited by a lot of colleges. In fact, it was Harvard the first one that called, and
Harvard called.
yeah, and then my
And you
dad.
probably had the grades.
Yeah, I was a good student. My SATs were not as great, but I was a 4.0 in high school.
So a guy who at 12 couldn't speak a word of English is a 4.0 by the time you graduate high school.
Well, yeah, and credit goes to our parents for encouraging us to do very well. And my dad and my mom used to
Right.
wake us at 4 a.m. just to do our homework and things like that. And I caught the bus with my brothers and sisters to San
Yeah.
Diego High. I live in Linda Vista to downtown at 5:35 every day.
Really?
Yeah.
Because they wanted you to go to a better school.
Yeah, it was a magnet program.
And did your dad ever talk? It seems like your dad's probably the type of guy who never really sat down and told you all the hardships he went through to get to get to Sudan, to get to Italy, to get to the United States. Did he talk much about his journey?
He talks about it when we get
When you would push
together,
him.
or
Yeah.
or he tells other people,
Mhm.
and how we started and where we came and how we ended up in the U.S.
Yeah.
But he has a photographic memory. He just tells you the names and the people and
Wow.
the time, and it's just amazing.
What's interesting to me is you've been surrounded by amazing people. I mean, obviously your parents, but your coaches, and then one of my favorite people on the planet is Coach Bob Larson.
Oh.
And when did you first meet him, and did he impress you as somebody you wanted to run for?
My dad always says, "Tell me who your friends are. I told you who you are." So in
That's
that
a
regard,
great
it
line.
just says,
Yeah.
surround yourself with good people and who are going to work hard in academics, and your environment needs to be in a positive way.
Right.
So that it will have positive influence. But I first met Coach Larson probably my junior year at UCLA, the National Scholastic High School Championship, and I believe I won that race, but I didn't think. He doesn't think so, so we have to look back to the results still.
That's funny.
But he just saw me around the 3,200 meter, and he saw me make a move 4 laps or 5 laps into it, and he just says, "That's the guy I won." And my senior year, him and Eric Pearson, who was assistant coach, and
At
to
UCLA.
him at UCLA, and he was a head coach for distance running for a few years. They both came to our house and visited and kind of saw what our story's been, and
Yeah.
my oldest brother was graduated or going to UC San Diego, and I had another brother, Aklilu, at UC Santa Barbara. So he saw my academics were really good, and he saw the talent and the drive to be successful was
Right.
there. So that's when we first met, and I didn't visit any other schools, believe it or not. It was
So after you met Coach Larson, you just knew.
Oh, I went and
the
visited
school.
UCLA, and they offered me a 5-year scholarship. I
Mhm.
said it was hard to refuse because at the time UCLA was the best academics and athletics,
No question.
and it's great weather, close by home, 2
Yes.
hours to drive away.
Yeah.
So I was definitely interested in going to Ivy League school, but
Mhm.
I need to do a boarding school for a year or so
Right.
before that. But when UCLA came with the offer for 5
years and not
So
have to get a winter
I said,
coat
yeah.
or a hat or gloves or any of that stuff.
Right, and I just said, "Hey, come in."
I'm in.
Yeah.
That is great. And you had success right away at UCLA.
Well, it went really well. Coach Larson and I talked, and he says, "Whatever's working, we're not going to change." So I just kind of showed him what my training log has been and
Yeah.
what have we done, and he said, "We're going to increase it maybe by 10%. But other than that, you already, getting great results, and it takes a real great man to admit that and to say, hey, let's focus on what you want to accomplish and
Right.
where you are and how we're going to make it to the next level." And I never broke 100 miles even when I was in college. So
What was interesting is when I had Coach Larson on in the past talking about you, and I asked him, so how did you design MEB's training program? And he'd say, well, I worked with a great runner named Kirk Pfeffer in the early 80s, late 70s, I think. And Pfeffer was similar to Meb, not a guy that you wanted to put a lot of mileage on, somebody who you wanted to make sure that quality was involved with the workout. I'm like, well, this is, Kirk Pfeffer was way back. Is training really not that different from what was in the early 80s to what someone like Meb is doing now? He says, no, running doesn't change. It's all about the effort, and it's all about, what you put into it is what you get out of it. So Kirk Pfeffer's program works for Meb, and Meb's program will work for somebody else. It seems like there's not a big difference.